and welcome to the September newsletter 2015 here with Vivesco Mobile Health and Fitness. My name is Martina and the topics today are number 1, new home, number 2, we are halfway through 12 small things to do for healthier living, number 3, the myofascial lines. Today we're talking about the functional lines, and to finish off with, we've got the soup of the month. So first up, new home. As some of you may be aware, I have moved house. So I used to be based in Scarborough, which is not longer the case. I'm now further north in Tapping, which is just east of Joondalup across Joondalup Lake. So there's not going to be a lot of change for my existing clients. I will not charge any of you extra traveling fee. I will still drive to Stirling area to provide my services to you. However, a bit more planning will most likely be needed simply because of the travel time that will occur for me. Please keep in mind, just keep that in mind when you book your sessions. For new clients, I will take on, but I will charge a travel fee, and also availabilities will be limited. So I'm sorry if this is causing an inconvenience for anyone. All right, number 6 of 12 small things to do for a healthier living. Today I want to talk to you about avoiding GMO foods. This is quite a bit a heavy topic, a lot against, a lot for it. So first off, I want to clarify the difference between genetically engineered foods, which is GMO, and crossed foods. So producing a new variety of food is done by taking 2 already existing types of the same food and combining their DNA in the fertilization process. It's as simple as it is with humans. You have a mom and a dad. Their mix of DNA produces a new different DNA in their child. The scientist Gregor Mendel was one of the first to play around with dominant recessive genomes. I've included a link in the written version where you can read a bit more about that if you prefer. Genetically modified foods are those that get DNA added to their existing DNA. So the DNA added is often comes from bacteria, from viruses, and GMO foods have been around probably since about 1994. So actually, 20 years. They were invented to ensure more and cheaper food production, as they are basically mainly designed to be resistant to pests and to last longer. It's not easy to find any evidence that GMO foods have any health risk for the end consumer, hence this post is purely based on my opinion. There is evidence out there, there is research out there that has been done, but as it always is with research, in the end you can never be quite sure how much truth is to it, depending on who's financed it, who funded it, who's got an interest in that research to be published. As I wrote earlier, GMO foods have been around for about 20 years. And one thing I can see over those 20 years is a definite increase in allergies and food intolerances in people. Now, I do know that this is related to GMO foods. No, I don't. I can't be sure that that's the only cause, but I follow my gut feeling. And besides other factors like a super increase in sugar intake and processed foods, in general, I believe that my health will be safer when I keep away from foods that have been tampered with genetically. Some people playing creator in a way, and that simply goes against my ethics. Furthermore, what becomes an economical issue lately is that the chemical industry who designs those GMO foods has a patent on them. The crops are often modified so they cannot reproduce, and new seeds need to be bought every year, or for every harvest, after every harvest. The small growers and farmers will not be able to keep up with those costs involved. And when you think about world hunger, I personally do not see how this is in any way fair or helpful. Monsanto, who is the owner of most GMO creations, is also the producer of Roundup, which I'm sure is known to you. It's a very well-known weed killer that is used here in Australia quite frequently. And it's still used even on crops that have been modified to be weed resistant, they're still using Roundup on top of that, which I really don't quite understand. Anyway, Roundup has had a bad rep, being found to be a possible carcinogenic. To me, this whole scenario just doesn't make sense, doesn't make me feel good about it. Hence my decision is to buy from local farmers who still grow their own crops with no GMO seeds. To give you a bit of an idea, most GMO is actually found in processed foods. So the ones that are most likely to be GMO, if you see them on any ingredient label, are the following. You've got corn, soy, sugar, aspartame, not an ingredient, but actually papayas grown in Hawaii are most likely GMOs. Canola, rapeseed, and most vegetable oils are GMO. Cotton, so there goes one for the ladies if you're using tampons. I'd think about that again and probably swap over to at least organic ones. Dairy, as I mentioned in my last blog, can be organic because the stock is actually fed GMO foods like corn. Then there's a few more: zucchini, yellow squash, potatoes, tomatoes. They can be GMO, so again, something I'd definitely go and buy organic. Vitamin supplements can be derived from GMO ingredients. Meats, same reason as the dairy, because the stock is being fed GMO foods. Honey can be a difficult one because obviously bees collect nectar from, you know, where do we know where they collect it from? So honey, yeah, just something to, I don't know, I haven't made up my mind on that one yet. Some research claims that GMO produces abnormal cell growth in animal testing, that it leads to weight gain, organ damage, and immune system abnormalities. But as I said earlier, as with all research, you start in looking for it, and there's always pros and cons. So all you can do is start informing yourself and listen to your intuition. That's what I do. I've got 2 links again included in the written version, just to, you know, where you can start your research and get into this debated topic a bit deeper if you'd like. Okay, talking about myofascial lines, today the functional lines, and we're actually almost through with all of them. So there's a picture here with our functional lines. As you can see, the functional lines are kind of extensions of the arm lines. On the front, they go across the surface of the trunk to the opposite side, pelvis and leg. Practically, if you look at it, we have 6 lines, 2 on the back, 2 on the front, and 2 on each side, which is called the ipsilateral functional line, which runs from the shoulder to the inside of the knee on the same side. The lines are called functional lines because they hardly play a role in our standing posture. They are, though, heavily involved during activities where one part of the body is stabilized, counterbalanced, or powered by its opposite side partner. So let's look at what functional lines do postural. And as I said before, they don't do very much postural. However, one thing that is often seen in distorted standing posture is a shortness of the distance between the shoulder and the hip because of that crossover link through the functional line, and you can see that kind of just being pulled together. And that can happen either through the front or the back. So this is often due to underlying issues, though, with the spiral line or the deep front line, which we will be talking about next week. Furthermore, the functional lines have some work to do in postures outside our normal standing posture. Yoga is a good example for that. In many poses where stabilization is needed of the upper girdle to the trunk, the functional lines here transmit the strain downward or provide the stability upward to stabilize the base of support for the upper limb. And what do the functional lines do in movement? The functional lines enable us to give more power as well as precision to movements of the limbs, so of the arms and our legs. This is because the lever arm is linked to the limb across the body and so connects the 2 girdles, your upper and your lower girdle. This way it loads enormous force onto the fascia this way to let it explode through the limb. It works either way though. So the weight of the arm can give additional momentum to a kick, as well as the pelvis can contribute to a strong tennis backhand, for example. The most common but often forgotten aspect is the continuous contralateral counterbalance between shoulder and hip at every single step that we take. The functional lines work in a helical pattern and can be considered a supplement to the spiral lines, so those two are hardly to differentiate from each other. As usual, we will now follow the lines, and I'll pop the picture up and just going to talk you through it so it's easier for you to follow along and see what I'm talking about. So here we go. Let's look at the back functional line first. It starts at number 1, the humerus, with the distal attachment of number 2, latissimus dorsi, following it down and further connecting into number 3, the superficial laminae of the sacrolumbar fascia. The BFL, your back functional line, crosses the midline at around about the level of the, again, number 3, sacrolumbar junction, passing through number 4, the sacral fascia, connecting with numbers 5 and 6, your gluteus maximus on the opposite side. Traveling further down the fibers of glute max, passing under number 7, the posterior edge of the IT band, and therefore under the lateral line, and then attaching to the posterolateral edge of the femur. Here is a fiber linkage between the glute max and number 8, vastus lateralis, which leads to a connection through the quadriceps tendon to the number 9, the patella. This one is again connected via number 10, the subpatellar tendon, to number 11, the tibial tuberosity. From here, the back functional line kind of melts together with the superficial front line, following down the tibial tuberosity to the foot. The front functional line, the FFL, starts in a similar spot to the back functional line as it complements back and front. Starting again, number 1 at the humerus, through the distal end this time of pec major, passing along number 2, the lowest fibers of that muscle, to number 3, the 5th and 6th ribs. The pectoral fibers form a fascial continuity with the abdominal aponeurosis, which links the external obliques with rectus abdominis. The line follows along number 4, the connecting edges of these muscles, so kind of in between your obliques and your rectus abdominis, to join those muscles to the pubis. We call this the semilunar line. The line then passes through the pubic bone and fibrocartilage of the pubic symphysis, number 5, and emerges on the other side along number 6, your adductor longus, passing down and out and back to attach to the number 7, linea aspera, on the posterior side of the femur. And that's where this line ends. The sideline, the ipsilateral functional line, also starts at the number 1 humerus, so they're all really starting at the same spot. Following number 2, the most lateral fibers of latissimus dorsi, which attaches to the outer portion of the number 3, the lower 3 ribs, and has a very strong connection to the posterior fibers of number 4, the external obliques, same as what we find in the lateral line. We follow the external obliques down to the anterior iliac crest, where the fibers connect over the number 5, the ASIS, to the number 6, the sartorius muscle. This muscle takes us down to the front of the thigh to the number 7, pes anseriens, on the medial epicondyle of the tibia. This line can be felt, for example, when pulling down the hand through the water in a crawl stroke. So even though we looked at the lines in kind of a static posture, as I all said earlier, it's quite an unpractical exercise really, because the functional line is in constant movement, and the lines of pull and the precision of the lines are constantly changing in movement. So that is pretty much it for the functional lines for us here. As they are so involved with active movement, there's not many issues here to deal with either, because the lines are getting usually well hydrated because of all the movement that they're involved in. They're getting constantly loaded and unloaded. However, if there is an issue in the other lines involved, as I said, particularly the spiral line, it can help to bring awareness to the tracks of the functional line to optimize the interplay and timing of their performance. Cool. And to finish off with, I've got a soup of the month again, which I've this time actually stole from another website. I've included the link in the written version. And it's a paprika and red pepper soup with pistachio puree. It sounds very strange, it's quite out there, but it's actually really, really, really delicious. So for this one you need 2 tablespoons of canola oil, 1 small onion diced, 2 large red bell peppers, 1 to 2 fresh green Thai or serrano chilies, 2 teaspoons sweet Hungarian paprika, 1 teaspoon sea salt, half teaspoon ground cardamom, half a cup unsalted shelled pistachios, 2 cups vegetable broth or water, and 1 cup non-fat buttermilk, as well as 2 tablespoons of whipped cream and 1/4 cup finely chopped cilantro or basil. I personally left the cream out, and the buttermilk I just used some organic milk, and that seemed to do the trick as well. So it still tasted good in the end. And I'm not gonna tell you what to do with all of this. If you want to read the recipe through, just head over to the written version and give this one a go. It's really, really nice tasting and a bit different as well. So that's this for this newsletter, and I hope you enjoyed it as always. If you've got any feedback, any questions, as usual, I'm here to help. Just flick me an email, give me a ring, send me a text, get in touch with me. And otherwise, I'll talk to you in about 2 weeks for the next blog entry. Till then, live healthy and take care. Bye.